Good evening. Okay, as usual, we'll be waiting a couple of minutes until more students come. Maybe till 6:32, 6:33. Well, let's get started. Okay, I'll hide videos. Well, before today, we were talking about the value of the company and about the company, any company we've been valuing as a set of financial reports. We took a financial report and used it to build our valuation on that. So we sort of believed that the value of the company, the performance of the company is disclosed completely by the financial report of this company. And this is not always the case. Actually, this is not the case at all, because first, financial reports is something that discloses the past of the company. And when we create our forecast for this company, basing just on its past financial reports, of course, we lose a lot of information, a lot of useful facts about this business, and we can miss important facts about the value of this company, about future performance, future revenue of this company. So today we make a step deeper in our analysis, and we'll be discussing industry, market, technology, all the factors that influence the future of our company. And because actually, in a contrast to what we discussed before, there's no formula or one method to analyze the industry competition and so on. We'll just discuss a top-level approaches, and then I'll give you 4 real-life examples that I believe will help you understand how people make mistakes in the evaluation, where those mistakes or those incorrect thinking about the company come from, and how you can avoid them in your analysis. Okay, but we'll start with some general theory. So to analyze the company, to value the company, we need to build a DCF model for this company, and this DCF part is based on just financial report forecast. So we need to forecast the financial reports of this company, and to build those forecasts, we usually start with sales forecast, with revenue of future revenues of this company. So in most cases, the main question for us is to build our revenue forecast, sales forecast for the company we go into value. There are several various techniques to build our financial, our sales forecast. And the first technique we'll be discussing now is a top-down approach based on the market or general economy. So in this top-down approach, we start with a broad economy, broad market, and then we discuss the share of this company in this market, and based on this, we build our forecast. So this approach, generally speaking, has 2 very similar versions. First, if our company is big enough to be linked to the economy of the country, like, for example, Magnit, because we'll be discussing Magnit today as one of our examples. Magnit is a big retail network. Its success and failures are linked to general success and failures of the economy. Of course, Magnit has its own factors, its own drivers, but general economy is a very important driver for Magnit sales. So the first step for us is to forecast the growth rate for the economy. And be careful here, because our financial model is usually in nominal terms. That is, it includes inflation. So our growth rate should be in nominal terms as well. And what we usually use as a GDP growth, basically it's in real terms. So when we say something like Russia had 1% GDP growth in this year, that means that Russia had 1% GDP growth in real terms. So we should add inflation to this growth. And that means that if, for example, this year we expect 1% GDP growth, and we expect that inflation rate will be 5% this year. That means that we have 6% growth rate for Russian economy for our financial models. The next step is to analyze the position of the company and calculate its growth and its sales relatively to the growth of GDP. So if we expect that Magnit has a large share in Russian sales and Russian economy, and GDP will be growing by 6%, it would be fairly to say that we expect that Magnit will grow 6% as well. So this is the idea of this calculation. Then we forecast, and we can forecast real GDP, subtracting inflation, and get forecast for the company revenues in the future in real terms. So this is the idea of top-down approach based on the economy. In this case, of course, we don't calculate the share of Magnit sales in GDP. We just relate their growth rates. Because anyway, even for the biggest company in any economy, this company doesn't have a big part in the country's GDP. So it's inconvenient to work with share of GDP. And anyway, it doesn't make much economical sense, because economy consists of many various industries. It's just looks strange to use share of this company in GDP. So we use growth rate. Another possible approach is to work with the market where this company operates. And in this case, we use the share of this market controlled by the company. And all the other ideas in our calculation are the same. We forecast the market size, the market growth. Here we are interested in the market size. Then we multiply it by the share of this company and get sales for this company. So this is the idea of calculating expected sales forecast based on the economy growth or based on the size of the market. And to do that, in most cases, we use market, not the economy, because not many companies are big enough to be related to the economy, and just because market looks like more reliable, because market is linked to the sales of the company are linked to the market much closer than to general economy. So to create our industry or market forecast, we have to think about factors, about drivers that change the size of this industry. Yes, we have some general economy growth, but general economy growth isn't enough for us when we analyzing a specific market. So we can use several approaches to analyze the market. I'll discuss them now. First approach is what we know is 5 forces introduced by Porter. And those 5 forces, you shouldn't take them directly. It doesn't mean that you should analyze each force, that each force can be calculated somehow, and that the size of the market can be calculated with those data about those forces. No, this is just a framework. This is a framework that helps you not to miss something in your analysis. So what those 5 forces influencing the market? First is current rivalry, current competition within this market. Is this market competitive enough? If it's absolutely competitive, you can expect that no company will earn economic profit on this market. That means that net present value of all companies working on this market will be about 0. So they will make accounting profit, but not economic profit. So, and of course, a market with a perfect competition doesn't look like a good investment. So we're always looking for markets with imperfect competition, because on such markets, companies can get higher than just 0 economic profit, and that means that the value of those companies will be growing, and those companies will be a good investment for us. But if you found a market with low competition, and this is the first step in our analysis, we should find a market where we believe competition isn't perfect. So our company, our investment can get higher than normal profit in the future, maybe not now. But even if you found a market like this, there are 4 other forces. They can steal these profits from you. Those forces are, first, threat of entry. And the idea is very simple. If other companies, other businesses can enter this market easily, then earlier or later, they will see that this market generates higher profits than the other markets. And they will enter this market, and they will be entering this market more and more new competitors until what? Until the moment where the market has perfect competition. So there's no additional profit from this market, and they will just earn regular 0 economic profit. Because of that, if you see that this market has high profit margins, but it has low barrier to entry, it's easy to enter this market. So in your forecasts, you should expect that in the future, this higher than average, higher than normal economic profit margin will disappear. The next possible threat to this market is threat of substitutes. If this market has high profit, too high profit margins, that's good for incumbents of this market, for those companies that work on this market. But what if their customers can find something, some other product to substitute this product? And if this substitute will replace supply for the product of our market, that again will be washing out our profits until we'll be forced, our companies will be forced to set lower prices or whatever. But anyway, that will be going until the moment when all companies on this market lose their economic profit. And when you have 0 economic profit, that's not very bad. That just means that the value of all companies on this market will stabilize. This value will not change. They will not lose this value, not necessarily, but their value will be stable. And of course, some substitutes can disrupt our market. And with those substitutes, our market can just disappear because of new technology, because of a new level of competition, new style of competition, and other things. The fourth force is power of our buyers. And look, imagine we have a market with a very good expected profit margin. So those who work in this area will earn higher than average, higher than normal profits. But what if the buyers can see that? And what if the buyers can force those their suppliers, those who produce something on this market, can force them to lower the price? Just because they can, because they have power. This power can come from many reasons, because your buyers have, I know, administrative power over you, political power over you, or maybe they are they are few, and because of that, you have no choice. You have to sell your product to them. And if they can coordinate their efforts to force you to set lower prices, they will do that. So this is economically efficient, market, but your buyers, not you, will capture this additional value. They will have lower price because of this efficiency of your business, not you, the higher profit. So this is another thing you should take into account when you build your forecast for the market. And the same thing is true for your suppliers. Your suppliers can see that you have high profits, and they can raise prices for their products, for your raw materials and components. And again, they will capture the value you expected from your very interesting market. So those five forces set you some general idea of what influences the market and why the industry or the market we are analyzing now can change in the future, and why we shouldn't take as granted what we have from our industry now. But we can set a more detailed framework for our analysis. Actually, those five forces are quite not primitive, but quite basic approach to the market. It takes into account only the most, the most market forces. Well, there are other forces on the market, in any industry, and in this wider framework, we should take into account things like technological influence, social influence, demographic influence, and macroeconomic influence. And maybe sometimes governments will do something to influence our market as well. To have a guide to apply those factors, you can use this matrix. So if we analyze an industry, the questions we should ask ourselves are: first, what are major companies working in this industry? Second, what are barriers to entry for new companies? Can they enter this market, this industry? And based on these two questions, we should answer the next question: what is the level of concentration in this industry? Maybe we have 20 companies on this in this industry, but of those 20 companies, 19 are very small companies, and one company is very large, and it controls 80% of the market. So even though we have 20 companies, the level of concentration for this industry is very high, and we should analyze this industry as monopolistic. The next question: what is the industry capacity? How the industry capacity impacted by these new entrants, current companies? Can they raise their capacity or manufacturing capacity quickly, or maybe it will take time, so you will have ability to capture any additional demand for this industry before other companies will raise their manufacturing capacity. So how the industry's capacity changes in time. The next question: is this a stable industry, or it's unstable and it has maybe economical cycles, or maybe it's growing quickly, and because it's growing quickly, it's unstable. It has today and tomorrow it will be having a different demand level, different size. If this is an industry with cycles, then what is the life cycle phase now in this industry? Is it on top of its life cycle, or on the down position? Next question: how fierce is price competition for this industry right now and in the future? And does this industry utilize price competition as the main competition tool, or maybe for this industry price competition isn't normal, and some other competition tools used for this industry? Next question is demographic influences. Does this industry or this market depend on demographic trends, and what are those trends in this market or in this country? For example, I have a question, an example. Some years ago, I was analyzing suburb trains in one of Russian regions. And what we saw was that because of demographic changes in villages around the cities, trains became unprofitable, and it was impossible to cure that, because train is a very heavy vehicle. It cannot be used with a small amount of passengers. It's just inconvenient. If you have 150 people, or at least 100 people for one train, for one suburb train, it's better to use trains than buses. But if you have to some destination just 10 people, it's impossible to use trains. Buses are more convenient, they are more profitable, and so on. So trains cannot compete against buses, and that was because of demographic changes. Because 40 years ago, 30 years ago, there were much more people living in those villages, so those train routes were established for those villages, and that was impossible just to cancel them because of political outcomes of actions like that. So the railways, the Russian railways in this case, were looking for ways to save those routes for the trains, but it was just impossible, and they had to subsidize those routes to to have them walking. And things like that, because of changes in demographics, actually happen a lot in many industries. The next question: government and regulatory influences, new laws, new requirements, things like that. The next question is social influence, change in lifestyle, change in demand regarding some qualities of the product, and so on. And the next is technology influences. We'll be discussing that in our examples. And the last is the question about general economy. Is our general economy now in growth, or oh, sorry, it's not about the economy, but about the influence of the economy to our company. Is our company grow with the economy's growth? Is it a defensive stock? Defensive stock means that our company prosper when during economic crisis. So, for example, we are selling some cheap goods, and during the crisis, the demand for cheaper goods will be higher, so our business will be okay even during the crisis. Or maybe we are cyclical. That means that we grow with the growth, we fall with prices, and so on. So these 12 questions are just a checklist for you that you can apply to any industry when you analyze this industry. There are other approaches that we can use to create our sales forecast. One approach is just balance of demand and supply for the market. In this case, we don't try to analyze the industry as a whole. Instead, we use a specific product of our company. Sometimes we can calculate demand for this product because we know the drivers, we know the current demand, we know the drivers that will change this demand, so we can calculate for many years ahead demand for the product. The next the next step is to forecast supply. And again, we know manufacturing capacity of all market players. We can add all current and expected projects to increase this capacity, so we can calculate the capacity. Then we can take into account any substitute and calculate if this market will be with excessive supply or with excessive demand. If we have excessive demand on the market without supply, that means that we can add our supply, add our business to this market. The prices will be growing probably. Our business, our manufacturer will have a high capacity utilization, and so on. And if by this balance between demand and supply, we'll see that demand will be too low for our supply, for the market supply, that means that we can expect high capacity utilization. We can expect that the prices will fall, and so on. And just to show you how big can be the difference between prices during high demand and low demand on such quite stable markets as industrial markets or transport, I mean industrial transport. I can give you an example. 2 years ago, In January 2019, if you needed a rail car, you could hire a rail car for your cargo, and you would pay for that 2,100 rubles per day. So 2,100 per day. Today, in May, it's June today, in May, yesterday. In May this year, the price for the same rent was lower than 700 rubles. So the prices fell 3 times for a day of rent of a rail car. And you can easily understand, I think, that the things like rail cars require very long-term investment. And with those rail cars, you can guess about how their owners feel now when the prices fell 3 times, and they probably have their lease payments, or they pay for their loans they took to buy those rail cars, and so on. So actually the changes, because of the balance between supply and demand, the changes can be very huge. And by the way, I don't know the exact number, but I can give you the level of difference between supply and demand 2 years ago and now. And it was like maybe we have about 300,000 rail cars of this type, about 1 million of all rail cars, but for the type I use now with this price, it was about 300,000 rail cars, and demand in 2019 was like 350 rail cars. And today it's like we have 300 rail cars and demand is 250. So 50 rail cars more than we have, or 50 rail cars less than we have, creates this difference between 2,100 and 700 rubles per day for a rail car. So you should be very careful with this balance between demand and supply. Prices sometimes are very sensitive to this balance. Another possible approach is to find a peer group. Find a group of similar businesses, maybe on other markets, with more information about their performance, their results, and use this peer group just like we use them to calculate market multiple valuation multiples. But we can use the same to build our sales forecast if we have a peer group of other companies. And the last possible approach is the approach that we used in our example 2 classes before, just extrapolation. We just use the current sales, apply some growth rate, and create sales forecast. This is a very basic approach, and it's open to all possible errors, to all possible problems coming from the market. We'll discuss that. Because we discussed this 2 things about extrapolation and about balance between supply and demand, I'm going to give you a couple of very simple examples about how the market actually behaves in some cases. The first example is about cement market in Kazakhstan between 2004 and 2009. And that's quite interesting. Here is several milestones for this period. Well, 2004, demand for cement in Kazakhstan was 5 million tons, and production by that way, by that time, was 4 million tons. Other 1 million was imported from Russia. And that time, the market started growing 25% per year, and all market participants saw that. So they started thinking about some new projects to develop more capacity for Kazakhstan market. And you should know that it takes 2.5 years to build a cement plant before the start of the project and start of production. So you always have a lag between the information you see and the result of your actions. So by 2006, the demand continued to grow. By that time, it was 7 million tons, and it was still growing. So Kazakhstan and Russia started a trade war, and that was a trade war, not a usual type of trade war when countries try to sell more their goods and try to stop others from selling goods to their market. So in most trade wars, countries protect their markets from external suppliers. In this trade war, they were fighting for cement. So Kazakhstan revoked all import duties, so you could import cement without any additional taxes, any import duties. Russia set export duties, so Russia tried to stop export from the country because in 2006 Russia needed its cement as well. So they started this trade war, and looking at that, all market participants started investing money in new capacities. But in 2006, most of their projects were to extend existing capacities. They started in Kazakhstan, in Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan, the two closer countries. By the next year, demand was 9 million tons. And looking at that, several projects of constructing new plants were started, both in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Their total capacity was about 5-6 million tons of new supply. When you start constructing a cement plant in 2007, that means that you'll be ready to deliver your first cement by the end of 2009. And in 2009, you know, it was just after the crisis of 2008. So demand fell from expected 14-15 million tons to 7-8 million tons. And at the same time, several new plants started their production. And the whole market by that time got capacity utilization 50-60%. So after several years of all cement plants trying to raise their supply, raise their production, they immediately came into a situation where their capacity utilization was 50%, and for a new plant, 50% of capacity utilization instead of expected 100% means what? Means bankruptcy, because you leverage you have about 70 to 80% of your capex financed by debt. And when your sales fell 2 times, that means that you don't have money to repay the debt, and all those plants went bankrupt. So you should be careful about these dynamics. This is the first lesson we can take from that. And by the way, even with the simpler things, sometimes market dynamics can be a bit more sophisticated than we expect. In this example, I told you about rail cars. For rail cars, we have a very predictable or quasi-predictable market. Rail cars, capital repair. This is a very predictable market because you can expect that it's very predictable because all rail cars have scheduled capital repair, and you must do this repair. And for any car, any rail car, you have a period of time after which you will not be allowed to the railroad unless you made your scheduled capital repair. It's just in IT system of the Russian railroads. You cannot get there without scheduled capital repair. And because this capital repair goes every 8 to 12 years, and we know exactly when each rail car was manufactured, so we can easily calculate the schedule for all rail cars repairs for this schedule for the future. So we can expect that this is a very stable market, and roughly each rail car on average should go through this capital repair every 10 years. Actually, they go through this capital repair only once because that's not exactly this way, but mostly every rail car after 10 years they go to capital repair. After 20 years they go to nowhere. But okay, we can calculate it every 10 years. That means we have 100 capital repairs per year, so we can plan now our repair capacity. We can plan revenues of our repair workshops. Not exactly. Look, first, not all rail cars are always in use. Sometimes we don't need some rail cars. We have overcapacity of rail cars. On average, and because we have various types of rail cars, you cannot always plan that exactly as you will be needed with this rail cars. So on average, we use just 800 rail cars, and we don't need to repair a rail car if we don't use it. Yes, we will not be allowed to the railways, but we don't need that. So we don't go and repair this rail car. And now, what if railways cargo fell by 5%? That just looks like something small, right? 5% in capacity utilization for the rail cars, not much. But when you don't need 5% of your cars, and to get capital repair, you will have to pay like 300,000 rubles for each rail car. What rail cars you will put aside? Definitely, you will put aside the rail cars that are scheduled for the capital repair. This way, you will avoid paying for this repair right now when your demand fell. So when 5% when we have 5% less in our utilization, our repairs fell by 50%. So in some years, that means that if 5% is fluctuations in our utilization of rail cars park, that means that in fact, in some years, we'll have 40,000 repairs. And in some years, we'll have this 100,000 repairs. But if after that, if after this fall in sales, the demand will grow, the demand for capital repairs will grow as well. And that means that after in any good state of economy, our demand will be higher than average, right? And that's not just 8,000 repairs plus 50%. Here, but by the way, I made a mistake. It's not in this line. Oh, sorry. In this line, 1 second. Here, it's not 100. It's 120, right? 50%. So from 40 to 120 repairs. And the last thing, actually, all those rail cars were manufactured not evenly in each year in the past. Sometimes the operators bought just 5,000 new rail cars, and sometimes they bought 80,000 rail cars. So the average demand will fluctuate as well with these changes. And because of that, the lower demand will be just 30,000. And the highest would be, it's not 120, it's about 150. So look, we started with something that looked like a very stable market. And now we can see that on this market, in any specific year, we could observe demand for 30,000 repairs or demand for 150,000 repairs. And the understanding of these dynamics is very important for us, because you shouldn't believe that the current year explains all the future of this company. Imagine that you are analyzing a company in the year when demand is 150. This company will look just great. But after 1 or 2 years, you will see that they losing their sales, they losing their margins, and they going down, and so on. And the opposite. If you analyze a company in a year when the demand is 30,000 rail cars, that means that even if the company looks bad right now, maybe its future is very bright. So this is another example you should take into account. And the last thing, okay, that was the most important part. Forecasting sales is a very important thing, but in one of our examples, we will see that sales are not all that we should know about the business. The next step is forecasting costs of this company. And again, in our example, we just used EBITDA margin, and we applied this EBITDA margin for all the future of this company without thinking about what will happen to this EBITDA margin in the future. But to see the full picture, of course, we should analyze cost structure of this business, and we should see how this cost structure created in the past when we collected this information, and how it can change in the future, and why it can change in the future. That will be actually our first example as well, about changing margins and how it influences the value of the company. And here with sales, we usually go top down from general market, from general economy. With costs and margins, we usually go bottom up. That means that we analyze the business, analyze drivers of this business, factors that influences its costs. In a perfect case, we would build a fully fledged financial model of the company with all costs of this business, with variable and fixed costs separated, with investments in working capital, with all capital expenditure forecasted, and so on. But in valuation models, we rarely do that. We rarely go that deep. This is something that we do in project finance, in the models when we analyze a business without the past, when we analyze something that we're going to create, so we just don't have a choice. We have to start with all the details, and we have to create a fully fledged model. But in business valuation, we simplify that. But you can see that even with this simplification, you should be careful, because sometimes this simplification goes too far. So this is a general approach. And now let's have some fun and discuss 4 cases of 4 great investments that became not so great later because of some different reasons. Okay, the first question, the first example will be about competition and the market. And the main question here is, how will Russian retail market look like in 2027? Did you ever think about things like that? Actually, our example will be from 2017. So today, you should think about how the Russian retail market, or the market you're analyzing, how it looks like in 2031, for example. And it looks like a funny question, really. How can we predict that? But the problem is that the value of a company often comes from a very distant future, and without at least some understanding of this distant future, you will be helpless with all your valuation methods and all your calculations. You have to predict a very distant future of a company. And now let's look at Magnit in 2017. By 2017, Magnit became a bigger Russian company. A bigger Russian company with very good growth from 2020. It was growing until 2015. Here it stopped growing, but from the first side, it doesn't look like a problem, because yes, we understand what happened here. Here came Ukraine with sanctions, with all the problems for the economy. So yes, it's leveled up a bit, but it doesn't fall, so it's not a big problem. It starts growing probably again later. So Magnit looks like a good investment. We can compare that with X5, for example, and here I would say this is the same interval. I would say here we can see something dangerous, because look, Magnit was growing, then roughly saying stabilized, and the main competitor X5 was losing its value, but from the same moment it started growing. Okay, but it doesn't tell us a lot. Okay, X5 is growing, Magnit isn't falling as well. Everything's good. Now let's look at the analysis. It was analysis created by Renaissance Capital in June or July. I don't remember. I think it was June 2017. So it's summer 2017, when they first time updated the evaluation for Magnit and degraded it from $36 per GDR to $30. And the first thing you should know about this valuation is that if you checked the valuation model presented by Renaissance Capital in 2017, you would see that 70% of Magnit's value came from terminal value in this model. And the model was 10 years model. So the terminal value is calculated for 2027, and the terminal value is built on expected performance of Magnit after this date. So 70% value of Magnit in 2017 comes from period like 2030, 2035, 2040, from periods like that. And that's very important to understand, not the Magnit's financial reports, because they don't tell us anything about 2030. It's important to understand how Magnit will be performing 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now. So now let's look at Magnit's story as Renaissance Capital saw it in 2017. First, yes, Magnit can continue growing, because why Magnit can continue growing? Russia has still 60% of modern retail penetration. That means 66% of retail is covered by modern supermarkets, not by those older corner shops, old style corner shops. And just 26% are controlled by top 5 retailers. In Turkey, the situation was even worse, but if we look at the Europe, or if you look at question. I'll read it. I did not meet a lot of people that enjoy Magnit as clients. I had stories about rude workers, outdated products, and uncomfortable shelves. Don't you think that negative clients experience will be a reason why finally it will lose competition with X5? I could tell the same about Peterechka, the main trademark for X5. And actually, Peterechka the best style of Peterочка, together with some other thing I'll mention later, was one of major reasons why Peterочка and X5 were losing market share. With Magnit, yes, you mentioned a very important thing, and we'll come to that. Okay, so first, we'll look at the market. And for the market, we can see that, yes, Magnit theoretically can grow if Magnit, if we expect that Russian retail market will come to something like Europe. And even more important, look at that. Look at this, the second chart. By that time, Peterочка came from St. Petersburg. Now it's global chain, of course, but initially it came from St. Petersburg. And in St. Petersburg, you can see that modern chains. So this is a mature market. There's no much space to grow in Northwest. It's easier to grow on central market where Moscow is. And what's very important, it's much easier to grow on southern and Volga regions, because Magnit came from southern region. It's from Krasnodar. They had headquarters in Krasnodar, and they felt very good on this in smaller cities and in towns in all regions of Russia. So their growth that time was fueled by their ability to work in any region of Russia. And we can see that they still have good potential to grow in this market. Okay, yes, that's true. But first, competition becomes fierce. 2 years ago, in 15, only 25% of Magnit's stores had Peterочка next to Magnit. And now, 2 years later, even not 2 years, it's data for December, it's probably about 55 or 45% by the summer of 2017. Now it's much more intense, this competition. So they now fight each other directly at one place, and competition like this always lead to first to some extent, at least, to price competition. And second thing is that it leads to just to a more direct comparison between those two offers. Okay, we can see this on a map. It's in Rostov for 2007. It was for 2014 even. No, it's for 2017. We can see that Peterочка and Magnit overlapped in this city, and this is a very new fact in 2017, because 5 years before that, Magnit was regarded as regional network, regional retail chain, while Peterочка was like for St. Petersburg, Moscow, and some other biggest cities. So the first thing we see that Peterочка just repeated the way Magnit expanded in regions, and now they are closely against each other. We'll come to that later. Second thing, interestingly, Magnit is growing, but it's become smaller. Smaller not in terms of size, smaller in terms of its share among top 3 retailers. So if we look at top 3 retailers, we can see that Magnit was becoming bigger and bigger as compared to Peterочка, and the third was Lenta, I believe. As compared to Peterочка and Lenta, it was becoming bigger and bigger until 2014. And now we can see that it's losing its share, and we can guess that X5 gaining this share, right? Yes, we compare Magnit to Peterочка. First of all, X5, yes, it has Перекресток and Peterочка, and that time they had some other trademarks, other formats. Magnit by that time tried to open Magnit supermarkets as well, but if you look at the share in sales, you will see that for Magnit, the main part of their revenues came from their small stores. And although X5 has Перекресток as well, and Перекресток had much more share in sales of X5, but for us, the most important thing, because our target company, our subject company is Magnit, so we comparing Magnit to the part of X5 that's directly competing Magnit. So we ignoring now Перекресток. We could probably, yes, the same customer segment, the same customer may be about the same, but the style of the stores are different. Okay, so Magnit becomes smaller, becoming smaller as compared to Peterочка and probably Lenta. And do we know what happens when a retail chain becomes smaller among top retail chains of the market? Yes, we know something about it. Look, it happened several years ago to Tesco, British top, by that time it was top British retail chain. This is Tesco share among top 8 of British retailers. They started losing their share, and look what happened to their trade margin or EBITDA margin. In 2015, their trade margin fell dramatically. Okay, but this is just one example. This is not a rule, right? Or not? Look, before that, before Tesco, the leader of British retail market was Sainsbury, and Sainsbury's started losing its market share as compared to Tesco in the end of 90s. And what happened? At the same moment, Tesco's margins stayed the same, and Sainsbury's started losing its trade margin. That's another example. Maybe we have other examples like that. Yes, in South Africa. In South Africa, the leader of the market was Pick n Pay retail chain. Again, they started losing their market share among top 3, and they lost their gross margin or trade margin or EBITDA margin. And the same in Poland. Biedronka, the leading Polish trade chain, retail chain. Look, they started losing their share, they started losing their margins. So, what is the outcome of this analysis? We can expect that Magnit will have lower EBITDA margin in the future. And of course, EBITDA margin in our financial model is a very important parameter. So we should, by that time, Magnit had a 10% EBITDA margin. We should expect a lower one. I don't know how a lower, but we should put a lower EBITDA margin in our financial model. That's for sure. And now about your question, about the fact that you have friends or you just talk to people who said that Peterочка looks better than Magnit. And that wasn't always the case. Before 2016, Peterочка usually looked like that. Very strange shop without windows and just very old-fashioned, looks like something messy and just but like this. And Peterочка updated its style. They became they still wore a cheap chain of quite basic, very economy stores, but they started looking better, and people started noticing that Peterочка just looks better. Magnit still was looking like this old Peterочка, and Magnit still had very old style inside the shop and so on. So because of that, people started choosing Peterочка over Magnit. There were other reasons. Here is some analysis of offering. In this example, is fruit offering at Magnit and Peterочка. And you can see Magnit is red, Peterочка is gray. You can see that Peterочка just has more to choose. Magnit just had worse assortment. And that was another example of why people chose Magnit over Peterочка over Magnit. About fresh or spoiled food, there are many opinions on that, because many people don't like Peterочка for the same reason, but visually they chose Magnit over Peterочка. Choice of goods were better and things like that. And some logistic issues were solved with Peterочка, so the freshness of food, I think, that time became better as well. So look, the reason for us to build one or another valuation model for Magnit here was not its financial performance, EBITDA margin, or things like that. Instead of that, we draw a map with Magnit and Peterочка. We take photos of their shops, and we think what we believe is the future of this retail store, retail chain, and that. And that's very important, because this is a very long-term forecast. You cannot build forecast like this just looking at financial reports. You should analyze fundamental value offered by the company. And here we can see that fundamental value of Magnit as a place where you can buy goods, and when you can do it with some at least some level of pleasure, this value is deteriorating. Because of that, of course, Magnit saw the same. Because of that, they declared that they going to start a new restyle project. They will update all their shops and so on, but that takes money. And that means that CapEx that we observe in their financial reports just not relevant for our forecast. And that means that for in our forecast, instead of repeating the 50 billion rubles per year of CapEx, we should put 100 billion rubles, 2 times more. So this is the first thing we should take into account. The second thing is that we should put lower EBITDA margin, because we don't believe that the retail chain losing their market share will retain their EBITDA margin. So we put in our financial model several changes. First, we put very high CapEx for the next several years, 2 times higher than we observe. Second, in our sales growth forecasts, we should put the lower, the most pessimistic expected sales growth. In this case, it was like 9% guidance instead of 9 to 13% that we had in all the financial models. Then the third things, we should put a lower EBITDA margin from 10% that Magnit had. We change it to 8%. They were still conservative. They didn't change it too much. They did it gradually, and for several years, this EBITDA margin went from 10% to 8%. But still, these 3 changes give us, instead of $36 per GDR, that gives us $30. And Magnit had, by that time, they had some other projects like this hypermarkets, family formats, but they didn't create any additional value of sales or EBITDA. They had a very good result from Magnit Cosmetic at strawberry stores, but they are just 6% of the business, so they didn't influence the business that moment too much. And with that, with this model, with these updates, Renaissance Capital updated their valuation to $30. And what happened next? Where is this? It's about here, right? Maybe here. So this update to $30 was about here. That time it was about 36. And the next several months, it fell to 25 and then to 13. This is because even with even understanding all these reasons, Renaissance Capital just wasn't brave enough to put something like EBITDA margin, not 8%, but immediately 6%. Or something like this, and maybe a lower growth rate and other changes that actually quickly gives us this 13 instead of 36. Why? Because we have a very high leverage by the fact that 70% of our value comes from terminal value. It comes from 2030, 2035, 2040. And if we don't believe in the foundations of this business, if we just don't believe that Magnit is good enough, that it's the best, because it was valued as the best company, but it failed to be the best as compared to Peterочка. And because it failed, its value after 2030 was destroyed by these changes in our faith. So this is the first example of what happens sometimes to our valuation, to the companies we analyze. Now, and from this example, you can see how important is to understand the basic drivers of the business. I think we'll make a break before the next example. So now it's 4 to 8, maybe 10 minutes. It's enough, I think, right? So 8:05. I'm waiting for you here. Okay, let's go on. So the next example. Next example will look fun, but it's about very serious things. And this is a case of Fabcom. And yeah, I have an interesting question. Do you think did ever Russian state-owned banks invested in the development of gay social networks? The answer is yes, of course. Not exactly in the gay social network. They invested a bit later. That time it wasn't clearly a gay social network, but anyway. Okay, we'll begin in June 2010. In 2010, a Fabulous.com, a website created as this social network, raised their first $250,000, and that makes actually this story a bit personal to me, because their first investor, David Bonnet, was initially founder of GeoCities, and you probably don't know this website, but that wasn't a social network. That time it was 90s. Social networks didn't exist, but it was a first hosting website, and my personal first website was on this GeoCities. But that was another investment. And what was Fabulous? Fabulous started in the beginning of 2010, and they had two strong ideas. First was to launch a social network for gay men, because that time they belief was that because not just sexually but socially gays are different, they need their separate social network. That looks outdated today, because today I think no company, no investor would launch something like this today, because that does look I don't know, as sexism. But that time this I don't know, social views weren't developed this way, so they believe that yeah, that would be good, because they different, they have their social circles, we will create those circles, and our idea is that those gays they not just different, but they buy different products. On average, open gays are have higher income, because not everybody opens in this, and those who open themselves in this sense, they on average are higher educated, have higher income. So this is a very attractive audience for a social network, for advertising, for selling something. So the first idea was to create this social network and build a recommendation service on top of this network for various goods. The second idea was to create a virtual currency. They called it bits. And you know, it was 2010. There was no Bitcoin that time. So it was a world before Bitcoin, but this website created the bits as virtual currency for their network. And the idea was that you could earn those bits with some recommendations, things like that, or you can just buy bits. You can send bits to other people on this network, and you can buy goods with this virtual currency. So they actually uh, set foundation for two most successful concepts of modern networks: virtual currency and social network. And I will show you the presentation they used uh, in the end of 2010, when they asked for the next tranche of investments, just to show you how they presented themselves that time. Okay, first, who is developing this website? They presented that their founder of Fabulis is Jason Goldberg, and Jason Goldberg previously created social media project and Jobster. And social media, Jobster is a very popular, I think nowadays still popular. I'm not sure, but I don't use it. But I think Jobster is still alive. Social media was sold to Xing, and I don't know, maybe somebody German speaking is in the group now. If anybody speaks German, you for sure know what Xing is, because Xing for German-speaking world is a local version of LinkedIn, just like Vkontakte is a local version of Facebook for Russia. So Xing is a quite a big project. Okay, so first step, we have a great team. Second, we have a great concept. We understand that we build in a company with revenue higher than $100 million a year. We have a market. We understand this market. We can analyze this market. We have a great product. We'll show this later. We have very good dynamics. In 5 months after start, we have 100,000 active users. That's a great success, actually. That's huge. We have a plan. We have a realistic plan how to grow to 1 million users by the next year, and to end 8 million users by 2014. Our product, we have a great website, walk-in website with very good response from our users, and we already built a mobile app. And you know, again, today, if somebody tells you that we started a project and we have a mobile, like a social project, and we have a mobile app, the answer from you would be something like, okay, did you have a choice? Of course you build mobile app if you go into communicate with people. But in 2010, it was a very innovative step, and they created mobile app. They have great usage statistics. As I said, 100 active users, very high percentage of return visitors, very high involvement from the users. So this is a very important thing, because when you just started, you cannot guess how good everything is just from visitors, because current 100,000 active users, that's not too much for a big project, but you have to forecast your future users somehow, and response from those 100,000 users is a very important predictor of future success or failure. They created this virtual economy with their bits, so they laid foundation for future revenues of the business. And the idea, as I said, was that in this social network, people would buy something or use this bits for payments among members of this community, and that creates economy for this project. So what they had, very good established application and product. Second, very good first check of their of the quality of their idea. They proved that they can reach this market, and very good future growth opportunities. And today we would say they actually didn't have these growth opportunities because social networks like Facebook, of course, eaten out all those niche products, no matter what kind of niche it was. It could be professional niche or this sexual niche or any social niche. They all were driven to Facebook or Contact or things like that. But that time in 2010, it looked like they have bright future, and this is a real strategy, and they have a plan. They predicted their sales and calculated their EBITDA for the next couple of years. After they come to sales like $100 million, they actually stopped calculating their EBITDA because they believe that by that time it's not important. They have some profitability and everything's fine. The company will be valued by things like EV to sales or something like that, based on sales, and this company can be sold or can go to IPO. And so with this great team, great market, great product, and so on, they asked for money for the investment, and they received. With this, I used a bit shorter presentation than the real one, but it was close, and the design was original from their presentation. They received money, about $2 million from several venture funds, and they started growing even faster than presented in this presentation. And then after 3 months, of this first investment, something very interesting happened. The founder of Fabcom called to their new investors and asked about board of directors meeting, and he said, you know, we are grateful for your trust and for your money. Unfortunately, we have to close this business. We're growing like hell. We're growing very fast. But the problem is that behind this growth, I don't see any future revenues. I understand now that our business model failed because people just talk to each other. They took our bits, our virtual currency, our marketing efforts as something fun, but not necessary. So we afraid that with this business model, we can build a social network without revenue. This part of our financial model, not this, the second line, yeah, the second line is failing now, and I would like to stop it before I spend your money, before I lost all your money. So we closing this website right now in February 2011, 3 months after they received this Series A funding. They closed it, and 6 months later, they reopened this website as a new project. Fabcom now, they removed this idea about gay social network. The idea of something gayish was removed from the project, although some flavor of the older concept remained the same. So now Fabcom was a website with designer goods. Here is an example: a stamp with Marilyn, called Golden Marilyn, that's selling for $700, and so on. Goods like this were the core products of Fabcom. And their previous users were so interested in what's going on with this new version that before they even opened the website, they got 200,000 pre-registered members. And over 175 designers became members of, became suppliers for this website. And from this moment, Fabcom became the hottest venture project in the internet for that time. After 3 days, after 1 month of their reopening, they generated first $1 million in revenue, and they grew from several people, from 10 or 15 people in their presentation. I didn't check now. They grew to 45 employees. By the end of 2011, they had 1 million members. And by that time, as I said, they were the hottest project in the internet. They were growing faster than Facebook, Twitter, or Groupon. They really was the hottest project. By the next summer, they raised the next large tranche from Atomica. It's a venture capital venture fund. By the end of 2012, they raised some money, as I said, from VTB Capital. By the time VTB Capital wasn't just one company, they raised about $300 million from various sources, and their market capitalization reached $1 billion. The number of visitors surpassed 10 million. So I'm describing a hugely successful project, right? And this is a hugely successful project with the CEO who's very fair, I think, and who sometimes tells bad truths before the worst things happen. So on October 11, 2013. This is a very, I put it here exactly as it was in a letter from CEO to all the employees and to the investors. He sent this letter. We spent $200 million in the past 2 years. We spent $200 million and we've not proven out our business model. We spent 200 million and we've not proven that we know precisely what customers want to buy. Retail businesses are not about the are all about the merchandise. No amount of marketing or financial engineering can overcome the merchandise. What happened? I will not read the others. You can read it. What happened to this company? They were growing very fast, but they spent so much on marketing that for each dollar in their sales, they spent $1.50 for advertising to fuel the sales. And they went so far, they went to spend $200 million this way, and nobody from investors noticed that. Everybody waited for the moment when they reach the level of sales where we will see the economy of scale, we will see things like that. But the problem was not in the answers like economy of sales. The problem was with what called unit economy. For every unit in this business model, for every unit of sales, they spend more than 1 unit to advertise it. And this business model could grow very fast, but they just couldn't earn money with this approach. So they closed. They didn't close exactly in October. The CEO quit. Then they, about a year, they tried to do something. They even opened, they started this project before October 2013. And they launched this project later, the website Hemcom. Hemcom sells designer furniture. It's actually basically it's targeted to Northern Europe countries. And yes, you still can go to Fabcom, buy furniture there, and it's fun that this furniture website actually started somewhere in the past as a gay social network. And soon after that, Fabcom was sold for $15 million. Oh, we don't know the exact number. Maybe it is between 15 and 50, let's say $30 million. So after valuation of 1 billion, they were sold for 30 million. Of course, all the investors lost everything. Those who came in the earlier stages lost just everything. Those who bought their shares the last got something, but not too much, not to pay back for their investments. So this is the story of Fabcom. And what we see in this story is that market success that we will discuss in the last, the previous example, the market success isn't everything. You should think about cost structure, business model, and how you will earn money now or in the future. Okay, the next example. The next example is about financial reports. So now we don't believe in reported sales because they can change. We don't believe in sales if we can see it, if we see the growth, because it's not enough. Now let's think about, can we trust financial reports? Can we always trust financial reports? And the example I will use is one of the most famous examples of corporate fraud. This is example when the company lost $180 billion of value in just one day. And some components of this story are even separately, they are very interesting because they show you what to be afraid of when you see how the company does its business. So the background. WorldCom initially started as the company called LLDS, Long Distance Discount Service. They were created in 1984, and they offered some services for retail commercial customers. That was actually the reason why this business was created, was that the United States telecommunication market at that time was built state by state, and your long distance calls between states had to be organized somehow. So the LLDS company was the company that bought capacity for long distance calls, sold this capacity to local telephone companies, and created this. It was like a market of selling communication capacity. Initially, it was just this. In 2087, maybe it wasn't just from the beginning, but after two or 3 years of operations, the company hired Bernard Ebbers as its CEO. And it's important to understand who he was. Bernard Ebbers wasn't a financial professional or business professional for a large company. He was a salesman. He was selling very different things like used cars and so on. So he was a salesman, and in his DNA. And he started building a company ruled by a salesman. The company was successful. In 1989, the company became public. Then it was renamed to WorldCom. They were growing fast, and by 2002, their market capitalization was $180 billion. It was one of the biggest companies in the world, together with Enron, that collapsed at the same time. They had 30 billion in revenue, 60,000 employees, so it's a huge business. And the first thing important for you anytime you analyzing a company, corporate culture. Corporate culture in WorldCom was all about sales and was all about value of the company. So they were very aggressive at sales, at forcing sales to higher the level, and they were very value oriented. And because of, and another thing is that they were very closed company, I would say. They didn't have a culture of a respectable business with all controlling auditing systems in place, and so on. Actually, Bernie Ebbers managed WorldCom with its $30 billion in revenue, just like a small shop selling used cars. So it was the first problem for this company. And now let's talk about what happened. We should know about one indicator used in valuation that time. It was expense to revenue ratio. For companies like that, for telecommunication companies, it was expense to revenue. Actually, it's like EBITDA margin. Expense is your expense for your network capacity, and revenue is your revenue from your this capacity. So it's exactly like EBITDA margin. The only thing is that expense here is in the numerator, and so I will call it EBITDA margin. So EBITDA margin was the most important parameter in all valuation models, and everybody knew that if you change your EBITDA margin, that goes directly to the valuation models, and that goes directly into your share price. And when by the end of 90s, in 2000, telecommunication market together with .com companies went into the crisis, of course, EBITDA margin started getting lower for all companies. But WorldCom decided not to do that. They started doing things to keep their EBITDA margin the same, and they found a way to do that. That time, actual bills for services sometimes came many months later after those services were actually delivered, and because of that, all companies calculated their costs on based on expected amount of expense. And after they receive actual bills, they sometimes accrue more expenses, but that happened rarely. In most cases, they released the accrued expenses. And that means that every company had up to 6 months of accrued, but not actually supported by the bills expenses. So in 2002, WorldCom started releasing more expenses that they actually had right to release. So what they did, they actually started drawing down their working capital. They started reducing their working capital, and by that they reduced their expenses. They kept the EBITDA margin at the same level. A year later, they came to the moment when they released all those accrued expenses. And because of that, because they did this thing, for 1 year, for about 1 year, they still reported EBITDA margin at the same level as before. But by 2002, by the end of 2002, they ran out of this resource, and they did the next very interesting thing. This is the idea of that looks actually very interesting. So they invested a lot in fiber optic cables, and because this project was just in the beginning, because they invested too much in created too bigger network of fiber optic, the capacity utilization for this fiber optic was just 4%. And if your capacity utilization is 4%, but you still have your fixed costs, of course, to support all this infrastructure, you will have low EBITDA margin and low profitability. That's obvious. So what they did, they said, you know, we invested in this fiber optic cables. We created this excessive infrastructure to be able to capture future growth of the market. And if you buy a plant, for example, your investment in the plant is for the next 20 years, right? Not for just for current year or for current quarter. So you do not put all your capital expenditure in your income statement. You gradually show that as your depreciation. So our operating expenses to support this infrastructure is actually kind of investment. Yes, we pay this money every month, but this is an investment. So we will capitalize all our fixed costs, all our fixed expenses as capital expenses. And when you capitalize them, you got two things. First, you have more and more assets because you capitalized your costs. And more assets creates a better financial reports. And second, you don't have losses. You still have high EBITDA margin. You're still profitable because you didn't report your expenses as operating expenses. And this way, they capitalized about $4 billion. $4 billion that had to appear in their financial reports. And they reported profits, and they earned for themselves the next year of their life. And by that time, you can see what the business they actually had. They had a business with very low EBITDA margin, unprofitable business, with overestimated assets, and so on. So maybe fair value for their business would be not 180 billion, but 80 billion or 50 billion, not zero. But they continue generating these fake reports, and of course this fraud destroyed even the value they still had in their business. But how can they do that? And we should look at two other things. Two other things important for us. Who was their auditor? Okay, they decided not to report that, but they had auditor, and the auditor was one of the biggest auditor in the world, Arthur Andersen. You don't know this company now, and now you know. Today we have a term, Big Four, right? For Big Four accounting companies. There's Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, and KPMG. But that time, it wasn't Big Four. It was big something more. Initially, when people started call it big, it was Big Seven. One disappeared. One was Coopers and Lybrand, and they created PricewaterhouseCoopers So they merged, they became Big Six. One disappeared, I don't remember who was one, and one of those Big Seven was Arthur Andersen. He disappeared after this story. And why they didn't report this fraud? Just because even though Arthur Andersen was a big auditor, WorldCom was the biggest client in the state where they had their headquarters. So for Arthur Andersen, it was definitely the most important client. So they actually closed their eyes on many things that happened in the company. And another lesson we can learn from that, we can't always trust auditors. Yes, auditors add some layer of control to the company, but this layer sometimes fail. And we have actually example of fraud like this in Russia, a quite recent example, and that's Transyra. And Transyra had their own auditors, and they didn't tell anything to the market, to investors, until the moment when this fraud was, I don't know, opened. It was pretty open even before, but it was officially, formally changed to real numbers, and real numbers were very bad. So the company went bankrupt after several months. Okay, so auditor didn't work, but the board of directors, and the board of directors, again, the quality of the board for a public company is very important. In this case, the board of directors consisted of friends, let's say friends of Ebers. So they didn't try to control him, and they didn't have in another dangerous thing. They didn't have compensation as salary. They were compensated mostly with stock. So they were very interested in the value of the stock, just as other managers of this company. And before the crash of the company, they actually approved a 400 million loan to Ebers, even though he asked to approve that after the loan was the loan was paid. So the board behaved erratically, and the board didn't consist of people who we could trust to, and things like that. But why they crashed eventually? They crashed because of their internal audit department. In the internal audit department, the head of internal audit department, that wasn't a very high position, but they had their responsibility for the audit. And Cynthia Cooper, who was the head of this department, started from looking at the strange capex, because she just couldn't see how this big capex could appear from the nature of the company's projects. She started asking her supervisors about the reasons for that capex, and she was actually told quite rudely that this is none of her business, and that happened being a business, because she and some other employees started by themselves, by their own initiative, secret investigation of what's going on in the company. And after they understood what happened, they formally disclosed their funding to the audit committee of the board. That was just the same as to publish it. So the board, even though the board maybe would prefer not to react to that, they couldn't do it from this moment. So she disclosed it to the board disclosed it to the market. After that, the company basically existed 5 days. After 5 days, the company lost all its values, went bankrupt, and all $180 billion of its value disappeared in just 1 week. And just to give you some information about what happened next. Arthur Andersen was closed. One of the biggest auditing company in the world was closed. They were never never presented in the court because right after that they got Enron's case, and Enron plus WorldCom was such a big failure that there was no chance to save the company, so the company was just closed. Bernie Ebbers got 25 years in prison and died last January in prison, and Cynthia Cooper became a Person of the Year that year by Time magazine, and she was named the Person of the Year. But what we see from this example, and you can actually, if you like, you can learn about this story much more. I like WorldCom case more than our own Transaero case, exactly because if you want, if you will, you can read everything about this case. And unfortunately, in case of Transaero, you can see some public information, but you cannot see what will happening inside the company, how they came to that. So you can guess something about the company, but there's no formal disclosure about that case. And with WorldCom, you can analyze everything, how that happened. So what we take from this case is that you shouldn't always trust to financial reports you see. Compare them with business logic you expect from the company, and maybe you will see that you should have your own performance estimation for this company. And the last case, it's about fraud, but this is the next level of fraud. And this is the case of Theranos. Theranos was a venture company started in 2004. And this company has a very innovative and very promising technology. But the idea basically looks like this. Look, we have a lot of modern high-tech equipment, analysis equipment. So why we do our lab tests, blood tests specifically, it was not about all medical tests. It was about blood tests. Why we do all our blood tests in this old style? Why will we need several tests, a lot of blood taken from you, just to do all those tests? The quantity of blood doesn't mean the same now for test equipment as it was 50 years ago or 20 years ago. So they declared that they created a lab-on-a-chip technology that needs just one drop of blood to do all existing blood tests. And they started developing this technology. They had some initial concept of technology. They need time to develop it, to get all certificates for this technology, and so on. They got their first seed investment in 2004. Then next year they got Series A investment, and by 2016, 10 years later, they were a huge company with valuation equal to $9 billion. And that time, Elizabeth Holmes, who was the founder of this company, became personally a billionaire. And yes, and they were chosen as the person of the year by the same Time magazine that 13 years before that chose Cynthia Cooper as the person of the year. Ironically, the most famous whistleblower became the same person of the year of this in the same magazine as one of the most famous fake entrepreneur. So she was not fake, but her company actually was a fraud. And what's interesting, if we look at their board of directors, if you think that a good board of directors can save you from fraud, from failures, you can look at their board of directors. Former vice president and treasurer of Oracle Corporation, former CEO of Wells Fargo, one of the biggest banks in the United States, former director of US Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So people who know everything about managing big investments, about finance, about medical products. So they had very good board of directors. You would have, if you invested in this company, you would have a very good fellow investors. Rupert Murdoch, for example, he invested $100 million in Theranos. And then something happened in 2016. It started actually when one of the venture companies asked Theranos about technical documentation on their blood tests. They didn't receive it, so they tried to check it themselves. They saw that actually, instead of one blood of test, one drop of blood for test, they were taking a full vial of blood, just like for regular tests. And after that, they knew that they got information that of about 40, I don't have these numbers here. So they had about 40 different tests, but only one of these tests was reliable enough to get certification. And all other 39 tests were taken, but after that, they used regular all-time tests to support their results from this test. So they started presented their technology as a working technology, as something complete, although they were far from success. And they went very far with this this fraud. They managed to hide it from this fact from investors. For many years, they raised in their value to $9 billion, but in fact, the whole business was just fake. So after disclosure of that, again, this company collapsed. Elizabeth Holmes, of course, lost everything. They still, I believe, they still trying to get her in prison, but she's not, I believe, now at least. But there are some ongoing litigations starting from 2016, and they are still going and going. What we can see from this is our last example, that even the existence of the business is something that you should question when you go into analyze its value. And now, eventually, we have this general process in our valuation. First, industry and market analysis and forecast. You should make sure that this company can survive on the market, and not for 3 years or 5 years, for 20 or 30 or 50 years. So it has a fundamental market offering that can survive for decades. Second, competition. What other companies, what other businesses are doing now to drive this this company from market? Can they change what we see now in their financial reports? Third, their strategy, technology, operations, and projects. Do they have actually some viable business, something that has strong, if it's a technological business, do they have strong technology? If this business is a venture business, check their unit economy, check their cost structure, and make sure that you believe that they actually will earn profits in the future. That you can see, you can model how they earn profits in the future. You can still make mistakes in your forecast, but at least you should try. And the last thing, financial due diligence and normalization of all financial reports you see. The financial reports from the last year or from last 2 years can be, first, misleading in terms of how they present long-term capability of this company. Recall the example with railcar repairs. Today or last year, you see one market, one result. 3 years later, you will see absolutely different results. So you should analyze these financial reports. Make sure that you can believe in this picture, and make sure that this picture is smoothened, and in the future, the principle, the foundations of their financial performance will be the same. And only after these 4 steps, you can return to what we learned in the previous lessons and build your financial forecast and apply something like free cash flow valuation to this, or use your multiples to quickly analyze this company. And this way you will get to a real value, or maybe closer, you'll get closer to the real value of the company. So this is what I was going to tell you today. That's it. Next time, the next lecture will be our last lecture. We'll be discussing private company valuation, and I actually expect that at least by the next lecture, I will receive your financial reports for Volkswagen. Try not to wait too long, because the closer we come to the end, the less will be your chance to get my response quickly. Because if in the last 3 days I'll receive all your works, and you expect that you'll get feedback and will have a chance to change something, to fix your errors, that might not be the case, because I will have to spend some time for each work. So if they all come in one day, somebody will have to wait several days, and after that it can be too late for you to fix anything. So do it earlier. And okay, have a good night. Bye bye.